Here's an example of what's going on with Lindsey Graham. I mean, they were so outraged on the right by this. Lindsey Graham had to go on Fox with the Jesse Waters to justify.
Chastising him to his face about it. Yeah.
Listen to Matt Walsh. This is the guy who has built his career on transphobia, but also still has retrograde perspectives on other groups of people in the country. He has a little bit of issue with representation of anybody but white people in movies. Also has some issues with women, but here he is. They have been espousing a ban on abortion in this country for 50 years, and they know that normal people are just, for the most part, horrified. And so when Lindsey Graham comes out and promises to deliver what they've been begging for, they're angry. Play this clip of Matt Walsh.
He's never been a big pro-life advocate in the first place. Like Lindsey Graham, when has he ever showed that he gives a damn about the pro-life cause? In the past, when Republicans have controlled the government, Lindsey Graham wasn't leading the charge to pass pro-life legislation. And there are things that could have been done even when Roe v. Wade was still active. So when they actually have the ability to do something, he doesn't want to do anything. And when the bill can't pass, that's when he's behind it. It's almost like he wants Republicans to lose. That's the conspiracy theory that I would actually subscribe to here. He wants Republicans to lose. This is sabotage. It's the only way to explain it. Given who it's coming from, especially. It's one thing if this was coming from someone in Congress who's just been deeply pro-life, a pro-life activist.
This is sabotage.
Yeah.
But introducing the fundamental piece of legislation that the conservative right and Republican Party have demanded for decades. If anything, it doesn't even go as far as that they want. And he's saying it's sabotage. I mean, they realize how much and this is really important for people to understand. Walsh is a religious fundamentalist. The religious fundamentalist movement in this country understands that what they propose to impose on other people is completely an anathema to the vast majority of Americans. And therefore, they have to do it in a very sneaky, undemocratic way, or otherwise it's sabotage. Continue to play. I mean, this is really extraordinary admission.
To explain it, given who it's coming from, especially. It's one thing if this was coming from someone in Congress who's just been deeply pro-life, a pro-life activist for years, and this has been their number one issue. And so they, and this is all they talk. This is one of their central things they talk about all the time. And they're just so excited about it that they maybe put the cart before the horse a little bit and came out and proposed this right before the midterms. That would be one thing. Now, I'd still say it's a bad political strategy, but then at least I could believe that it's sincere. In this case, I don't even believe that it's sincere.
Wow.
This to me seems like sabotage. Because there are Republicans who want to be the minority party. They want to be the opposition. They want to be in the position of proposing laws that they know cannot pass.
I mean, it's just the critique from Jesse Waters, from Matt Walsh. I mean, Mitch McConnell behind the scenes, we know, is not about what the legislation is. It's about the timing. And he said it right there about the midterms. They understand, as you were saying, Sam, and they've been doing this for decades with the opposition to abortion rights, that you have to hide the ball until it's the exact right moment to strike. They did it with the confirmation hearings of all these Supreme Court justices where they said it's settled law. And they did it in terms of just like they're doing it now with it's states' rights. It's states' rights. Like, Lindsey, you let the cat out of the bag when you weren't supposed to do it. We were supposed to wait until we had power. We were going to lie to people up until that point. And the fact that they're just saying it kind of says everything, in my opinion.
I like how Walsh is pretending to, like, it's not right if he's not sincere about being anti-abortion. Incidentally, Donald Trump, not necessarily the most sincere pro-life guy out there. Like, I never heard Matt Walsh. If anything, they said the opposite, right? Like, who cares what he thinks? The point is, we want this. But it's fascinating admission, isn't it? That they know that this is, this is radioactive. They're fundamental. And so, like the cavalry, here comes DeSantis and Abbott with like, just a reminder, we're going to own the libs by, possibly criminally kidnapping or defrauding these immigrants. And then also, like, in the end, all it does is basically show, people are actually pretty compassionate about immigrants in some parts of the country, I guess. I mean, it really is. They really feel back-footed to me.
Oh, there is no doubt about it. I think this hit them like a ton of bricks, and I don't think they expected the court to do it. This 15-week ban that Graham proposed this week is what they thought they were going to get. And in fact, DeSantis, basically all the people like Matt Walsh are, having screaming fits. DeSantis had put through a 15-week abortion ban. And by the way, he's been very cagey on this issue. He's out front with every culture war thing going on except abortion. And he's been just keeping his mouth shut on that. For all the reasons that you just said. This thing is toxic to them. It is toxic to them. In fact, I just read today in the New York Times, the new polling is out in the New York Times on this, and they interviewed a bunch of Republicans, including some men, who were saying, hey, I really don't like the economy. Joe Biden, I don't really feel that great about him. I think he's given away too much money to people who don't deserve it and blah, blah, blah. But this abortion thing, I can't go along with. Taking away a right, I think even to the ears of some people who are, otherwise, they're obviously not, anti-abortion zealots, but just people who sort of thought of themselves as kind of, I don't really care, it's not my issue or whatever. This seems to have really just hit people just in very viscerally. There's something about what the court did here. And, I think maybe it had to do with the opinion itself as well, to the extent that anybody's heard it or heard about it or read it. It was an extreme and completely outrageous Supreme Court opinion, the opinion itself, much less the substance of what they were doing. And it came as a big surprise that the Republicans have been, as you say, they've been doing this, piecemeal over the years. They've trained their people like Matt Walsh to accept lying, right? This is just, you lie about it because, just go ahead. This is so important. We're saving, it's genocide. So we're saving all these babies' lives. So whatever you have to do, however underhanded it is, however much dishonest it is, whatever it is you're saying, you can go ahead and do that because the cause is so great. The problem is now that they've actually done something major, they're stuck with the ensuing politics, which I honestly wonder sometimes, and maybe you have some ideas on this, because I've been watching this reaction from people, and they're so shocked, and so, as you said, they're back-footed. They're just completely, they don't really know where to turn on this issue. They don't know what to do other than try and lie about it, and that's going to be very difficult considering how in the last few years they've been going on the record as more and more and more extreme, thinking they were protected, right? I can say anything because, they're not going to overturn it. So I can say that there should be no exceptions for, the life of the mother. There should be no exceptions for rape and incest. These were not normal things up until just the last couple of years. That even Republicans didn't go have that as part of their agenda. Suddenly, they just went crazy, and I think that they thought they were protected and they aren't, and now they're having to deal with the consequences of this issue being decided, and it's completely, it's left them with very, very little to say about it. And I'm, to be honest with you, I'm wondering, do you think it was that they were just cynical all the way and didn't have, just kind of assumed, hey, the court, they know the game, they're not going to go all the way here. Is that what's happening? Or did they really believe somehow, did they convince themselves that the country didn't give a damn about this and that basically it would happen and everybody would just move on and that it was meaningless? I mean, I don't know what they thought here. I mean, they obviously this was a very big error, a political error on their part for actually, if they weren't prepared for this happening. And I don't know. I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you think that they just didn't, thought that everybody just shrugged their shoulders and say, hey, that's a shame?
I think it's sort of like a Paul Wolfowitz, we all had our own reasons and they all had their own ideas and, we weapons of mass destruction was just what we agreed on. Look, John Roberts tried to do what you're talking about. John Roberts wanted the 15-week ban. We're just going to uphold this case and not go all the way to overturn Roe v. Wade, although you could argue that the 15 weeks would have been an overturning of Roe v. Wade. On some level, Casey was too. But nevertheless, he couldn't control them. And I think on some level, I think there were people who thought that John Roberts could corral them. And I think there were others who were like, this is great. I mean, I just keep remembering that clip of that woman who testified in front of the Senate. And I can't remember who it was that was asking her questions where they were saying about, I can't remember what the sort of so-called exception was. And she goes, well, in that instance, if the woman's life is in danger, it's not abortion.
Right.
And they're
right.
like, what? It is abortion. Abortion is a medical procedure. There's no, the statutes don't define what a medical procedure is. It's abortion. And as if but if God, God sees and comes in and changes what it is, if, that I think a huge portion of these people are religious zealots and they have absolutely no idea about how their stuff is received. No, I think in many instances they don't care because a huge portion of these people are religious zealots, and they have absolutely no idea about how their stuff is received. No, I think in many instances they don't care because they have God on their side. Let's play this clip from Charlie Kirk. Same situation where he is just enraged that Lindsey Graham actually advocated doing what they have been basically arguing is popular, right? I mean, you never heard them ever say stopping abortion. They would always say people don't want abortion. I mean, that was their argument. In fact, we heard this from centrist politicians. We heard and writers. You and I remember Hillary Clinton in 2004 really pushing this idea that the Democrats have to moderate on abortion because it's icky for people, this and that. And now 65% of the population saying 15-week ban. No, we want people to be able to decide if they need an abortion with their doctor, period, end of story. Here's Charlie Kirk. He's just enraged by this.
Now, I just want to reemphasize this. I am 100% pro-life. I am outspokenly pro-life. I am so pro-life that I'll debate anybody on the topic at any time. The only exception I could possibly imagine is life of the mother. And I will defend that position morally, scientifically, and biologically and philosophically. But introducing
Pause it for 1 second. What it would take, how many percentage points would Charlie Kirk have to be if he believes that abortion is murder, 100% abortion is murder. He is so dedicated to that position that he will debate anybody.
Anytime.
But what he won't do is support a bill being introduced that would stop murdering potentially thousands and thousands of babies right away.
I mean,
right away. If you think it's murder and you want to sit,
stupid.
yeah, well, right.
Lindsey Graham said he wanted to. Lindsey Graham
5
said this.
a.m. I'll be there for that debate. You're going to make it at 3:30 in the morning because you think I'm going to be tired? I'm going to sleep in the afternoon and be up for that debate. That's how dedicated I am to this.
Maybe he'll debate you, Sam.
They're so into debate lord stuff. Like Lindsey Graham said he introduced this bill so they could have a debate.
Exactly. Lindsey Graham did this because he wanted to stake out that we have a reasonable position on it. That was the agenda. He knew it wasn't going to pass. He wanted it to create conversation. And these people want nothing said about it whatsoever. Play Charlie Kirk.
The mother. And I will defend that position morally, scientifically, and biologically, and philosophically. But introducing a piece of legislation that you do not have the votes for, like not even close to having the votes for, it's not going to pass, is the only rationale is that you want this election to be about abortion? And if it was Josh Hawley, I would say, okay, or Ted Cruz, why is Lindsey Graham 25 days out from ballots going out, galloping in and saying, we need a federal abortion ban? Really, where have you been, Lindsey Graham? That feels like election interference. And I say this as someone who is so pro-life. I would love a total abortion ban. 15 weeks is not enough, but I'm also not dumb. 25 days out from ballots going out, the Democrats are applauding, thank you, Lindsey Graham, for making this issue about abortion. They're enthusiastic that Lindsey Graham is now making this all about the one issue Democrats actually can win suburban women on. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that the country was as pro-life as I am.
I mean, he's not dumb. He knows that the American public disagrees with this. He knows that it's not a winning issue for Republicans. And he also knows when a human fetus when he sees it, except for when it's also a dolphin fetus. But that's another point. He had a little problem with that. But more importantly, I mean, he's being honest here. He's being honest. One of the rare moments, probably, where he knows that. And what's fascinating too is, what else do they have? What else do they have? I mean, Donald Trump won the presidency because, and like I said, there's a lot of reasons. Hillary Clinton made some mistakes as a candidate, had a lot of baggage as a candidate, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things, the most underestimated reason, was because that Merrick Garland seat was empty. And because Donald Trump held up a sheet of paper that said, I got a list from the Heritage Foundation. Everybody knew. Everybody, the one thing you could have said about every single person on that list, they are all for overturning Roe v. Wade.
Yep.
And everybody knew. And the, I would say the core of the Republican Party came out. Those evangelical, right-wing evangelicals came out for that one reason right there. That's why they came out, because they wanted this abortion. So, the idea that this wasn't, an electoral motivation factor, like the problem is they caught the car and people realize like they are this crazy. And like, this is the thing that they are starting to realize, like, we're crazy. Like in the eyes of the majority, we're crazy, and we got to be a little bit on the DL about this.
Well, they used to know that, there used to be, you always had, they've been doing this for a long time, and you had them, kind of, keep this a little ixnay on the incest and exceptions for incest and rape stuff. Don't go there. People don't like that. So just, we'll deal with it down the road. there was always this sort of implicit thing, which is just don't push this too far. So on some level, they had to know that most, the polling's always been pretty consistent, although ever since the decision, the support for Roe versus Wade has grown. The support for abortion rights has grown, which is very interesting to me, because it's like, what did it take, people? What were you thinking here? But, whatever, I'll take it. But, they had to have realized that this was not a popular position. They did not care, because this was working for them. I mean, just on the purely cynical level, if you look at it, you're seeing guys like Kirk and Walsh, who, look, they're operatives essentially, right? I mean,
Right.
they're not sincere evangelical Christians. They're political operatives. And, you can see there where they're sort of recognizing that there's been that there's an error in their strategy. I mean, think about it. Think about how much better off they would have been if they had not done what they did with the Supreme Court and just left that seat, given that seat to, say, Merrick Garland, who isn't in any way not a far left kind of, rabble-rousing, swashbuckling progressive. He probably would have been the kind of guy that sort of, a Stephen Breyer type, maybe, not bad, but not great.
Business friendly and
Yeah. He would have been fine. And if they had let that seat go to Merrick Garland, and then they would have had, Kavanaugh, or maybe they wouldn't have Kavanaugh. They'd have put Gorsuch into that seat. I don't know. And then you would have had Amy Coney Barrett. You wouldn't have had this, I mean, there's a monolith in the Supreme Court now that is uncontrollable, clearly, because you can tell by what John Roberts tried to do and couldn't do it. He doesn't have control of that court. It's Justice Alito and Thomas's court. I mean, they are the ones who are running things. And so it's out of their hands now. They overplayed their hand on a lot of this stuff. And I think we're going to see this. Unfortunately for the country, that may not be very good for them politically over time, but for the country, it's an absolute disaster, obviously. I mean, it's an absolute disaster, and as is this abortion ruling. And as I always hesitate, because I write about this and I'm thinking, I'm sort of enjoying the fact that, the Democrats have an advantage on the issue, and that it's maybe propelling them into maybe holding on to the Congress, or at the very least, reducing their losses, and, maybe keeping a hold of the Senate, which would be very important. But at the same time, come on, look at the suffering that's happening to people all over the country in these red states. And just this week, West Virginia passed, a draconian abortion law that, very few exceptions, and they're second guessing doctors all over the place, saying, well, no, that doesn't really qualify as, the life of the mother. We think she ought to wait and see till she's really on death's door. She needs to be gasping and unable to breathe before we're going to accept that. This is the kind of stuff that's happening in these states, especially the sort of antediluvian southern states, where they're just really, flying backwards into the 1700s. And so it's awful, and I'm glad that there's an advantage for Democrats politically, because it says something about the country that sort of relieves me a little bit, that people haven't completely gone so cynical that they don't care anymore. But the actual consequences of this horrifying decision it just kills me every time I read these stories about people. It's
horrible. And we talked about that story about cancer patients not getting treated until they're sick enough to sufficiently get outside of legal jeopardy, perhaps. Texas did not report their maternal deaths this year. They're holding off until after the election. I imagine there's a reason for that as well, because they've been operating under this abortion ban now almost since December. So they may have seen an uptick. We don't know.